is it then? Please tell these guys.
It's Tony time, bitches!
Welcome to Tony's MMA Corner, the only MMA channel that parties with Conor McGregor. Till 10 p.m. that is. I am your host, Tony Sepulveda! And today, we find out if China has its own Conor McGregor, if Dagestan has its own karate superstar, and if Ireland has its own Conor McGregor anymore. But before we get into all that, remember, if you haven't already, be sure to sign up to my email list so you can get more exclusive content from Tony's MMA Corner. While the UFC didn't have one of its exciting cards this weekend, we did have the Road to UFC Shanghai event. Now, if you're anything like me, you didn't even know what was going on until you started seeing all the nasty highlights on Instagram. And one of those nasty highlights happened to be from a gentleman named Lee Kai-Wen. Now, Lee Kai-Wen was an explosive featherweight at 1FC. During his time in 1FC, Lee Kai-Wen was a fan favorite finisher. If you watched his bout this past Saturday, he showed that same tenacity in a UFC octagon. He wasted no time dispatching of his opponent. I even heard a mention from either the UFC commentators that he believes, Lee Kai-Wen that is, that he could be the next superstar like a Conor McGregor for the Asian market. From what I've seen so far, this kid doesn't have a boring fight. And love Conor or hate him, that was one of his strengths. Any fight that Conor was in, everybody was interested. And the fights never disappointed. And Lee Kai-Wen happens to have a personality that is not like most Asian men. Sometimes they seem to be a little bit more stoic or socially awkward. Of course, there are exceptions. But Lee Kai-Wen seems to have that confidence and that fighting style that leads me to believe he certainly is going to be a star that I'll be looking forward to seeing, and you guys should be looking forward to seeing as well. So keep an eye out for Lee Kai-Wen. I see big things for him in the UFC. It looks like Dagestan has another Magomedov, but it's not a Nurmagomedov. And this guy is not known for his relentless wrestling style and vicious ground and pound. He is actually known for his karate and his lightning fast kicks. So I'm not going to say his name. The good thing is he has an excellent nickname that we will be referring to him from now on. Bullet. Bullet is the latest Daggy that will be making his debut, reportedly, at the next Abu Dhabi card, UFC 294. If you're not a casual and you follow MMA on social media, especially sites like Instagram and YouTube, I'm sure you have seen highlights of Bullet. He is an 11-0 fighter who is looking to make a big splash in the UFC. Now, it's been reported that his first opponent is going to be a very tough Derek Brunson. However, Brunson has had 2 back-to-back losses, and it even seemed like he was going to retire. I actually thought that he kind of announced it. But it looks like he might be fighting the Karate Daggy in October. And if this is the case, it looks like the UFC wants to make sure Derek Brunson goes out with a bang. The one thing we could say about this, looks like it's going to be an exciting fight. And it's going to be very interesting. What kind of wrestling does the Bullet have? I mean, he is from Dagestan, but the great majority of his victories are by TKO. And if you watch his highlights, he's throwing side kicks, hook kicks, leg kicks. These are all things that Derek Brunson may be able to exploit with his wrestling. Another layer to this is the Bullet has one of the most intimidating looks that you will ever see in a fighter. He looks like your classic Russian villain from a movie, lazy eye and all. And he happens to be a soulless ginger. All of these things need to be considered by Derek Brunson. If this fight is actually happening, he's certainly taking a big risk. I look forward to seeing Shadow Bullet's career in the UFC tonight or last night, depending on when I upload this or when you watch this. The latest season of The Ultimate Fighter begins. That's right, Conor McGregor makes his much anticipated return. And you have to admit it, whether you love him or you hate him, MMA is way more fun with Conor in it. So I'm particularly excited about this season. I haven't watched The Ultimate Fighter in quite a few seasons. I will certainly be watching this season. I'm sure it will lead to a lot of great content. The question now begs, at the end of this season, usually the coaches fight each other. And it is reported that Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler will be fighting each other by the end of this year. Now sure, there's plenty of time left in this year, but when you're watching Conor on social media, cameras are always on him, it just makes you wonder, is this fight really going to happen? And if it does happen, what kind of Conor can we expect? Will it be the Conor that lit up the world in his way to starching Jose Aldo, then becoming the champ when he absolutely tooled Eddie Alvarez? Or are we going to get the Conor that has lost 3 of his last 4 fights? Another thing is Conor's put on quite a bit of muscle. He just put himself into the USADA testing pool. It's been reported. How's that going to work out? I'm not saying he's on steroids, but nobody gets that big eating terrible Irish food. So will Conor even be able to pass a test? These are all questions that the MMA community has before it gets its hopes up about a McGregor return in 2023. I, for one, hope he does. And like I said, he does have plenty of time. Listen, have your fun. But we know Michael Chandler's been wanting this fight for years. And Michael Chandler is taking this fight very seriously. Sure, Michael Chandler doesn't have the best MMA IQ. We know the Conor of the past would absolutely starch him. But this big layoff, his partying ways, leaves a lot of questions. That's also the reason why Conor fights are so interesting. Because Conor can lose all of them. Even when he was coming up, all those fights, you were like, can Conor beat this guy? And then he would just absolutely dominate a guy. And then dominate one of the best fighters in the world in Jose Aldo. But he always looked beatable. And Conor is beatable. But he also happens to be the biggest star that MMA has ever seen and may ever see. So Conor, we all want you back. But just show us that you're going to come back. We'll just have to wait and see. Summer's coming up. And I don't see his partying ways really slowing down that much. Either way, we'll all be tuning in. Let's face it, a Conor fight is an event that none of us want to miss. Well guys, that's it for me. And I'll see you guys next time on Tony's MMA Corner. Psychic!